Okay, so I wanted to have some notes about fraction basics. We want to be able to review adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with fractions. But before we got into that, I thought we should cover just some basic things when you're working with fractions, okay? And Miss Demeter started talking about this a little bit when she was doing the DMR, but let's first talk about the parts of a fraction, okay? Let's say that we have the fraction 1/4. What is the name of the number that is on top, the 1? What is that called?
Numerator.
The numerator. And the bottom number is called the denominator. Good. So I know when some people have told me their elementary school teachers kind of help them remember denominator starts with a D, down starts with a D, so maybe you can remember it that way. But it is important to know the difference in the two names. Now, what does the denominator mean? What does the denominator mean? For what? For total parts, right? For total parts, and the 1, the numerator would represent, what's the numerator tell you? Aiden?
How much is it actually?
Okay, so if it was a picture, like how many parts were shaded in, or how many parts you're talking about of the 4, right? So I'm gonna call them selected parts. So again, the 1 would be how many parts are selected, and the denominator, the 4, would be how many total parts there are. Now, it is impossible to have a denominator of 0. You cannot have a 0 as the denominator, because if you had something like 5/0, how can you have 5 parts selected if you don't have any to start with, right? It would be impossible. So that's actually called something which we'll get into later on in the year. It's called undefined, and when we talk about slope, like slopes are lines, and it is a straight up and down line. So you will see this later on in the year, but it would be called undefined. And if you ever try to put something like that into a calculator, the calculator doesn't like that very much. All right, so we can represent fractions by drawing pictures. Now, I'm not gonna have you do pictures on your assignment, because doing that on a Google form would be pretty tough. But let's say we had the fraction 3/4, and I gave you a circle. So we're gonna pretend like that's a perfect circle, okay? I know it's not, and I'm sure in your notes it's not gonna be a perfect circle, but these are just notes, okay? Now, what would I need to start with doing if I wanted to represent 3/4 on this circle? All right. Cut it into 4 pieces. Now, does it matter how I cut it into 4 pieces?
No.
So I could do this. Would that be okay? That's 4 pieces. Would that be okay? Why not? They're not even. So something important is that when you break the shape up into however many pieces total, that the pieces need to be equal sized, right? So a lot of times if I was just breaking it into 4, I'd probably do it like that, right? Or it'd be fine if you did like an X, like that. Because really that's just turned. So as long as your pieces are equal, and again, I know this is just notes, we're not being like precise, okay? But you can see the big difference with the way I did it the first time, where we had like little slivers on the end. Okay, so 4 total pieces, and then what would be my next step? To show 3/4.
Shade in 3.
Shade in 3. Does it matter which 3? Nope, doesn't matter which 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3/4. Now, a lot of times you will see circles used to represent fractions, but you can use other shapes as well. You could use a rectangle. And we said, again, it's super important that our pieces, we want 4 total pieces, and that they need to be the same size. So it's gonna be your choice. You could break it in half vertically, and then break it in half horizontally. That would be 4 equal pieces, correct? Could I do, actually, I'll put that one back. Could I do it like this? Would that be okay? Yeah. All right. So again, we know it's not perfect, but that would still get me 4 equal pieces. All right. So it's totally your decision on what you prefer to make it look like. I don't know if I can get the other one back. I like this one, I think, the best. And again, you would just color in 3 of them. Okay, I think we're good on this. Again, I did say this was gonna be fraction basics, so should be pretty easy. All right, let's now review how to simplify a fraction. How to simplify a fraction. Now you're in 7th grade now, you've been working with fractions for multiple years. It should be known without being told that if you get a final answer and you can simplify it, that you should simplify it. Okay, so you should always try to simplify the fraction. So let's say we had the fraction 8/12. And I'm telling you, you can simplify this. How would you simplify this? What would you do to simplify this? Jordan?
Divide by 4,
Divide by 4. How did you come up with the 4?
because there's the 8 and 12.
Because there's an 8 and a 12. What about the 8?
They can both be multiplied by 4.
Okay, so 4 would be a factor of 8 and 12. Remember when we were doing the DMR where we had to find the GCF? So the GCF is what you can divide both the numerator and the denominator by. The GCF of 8 and 12 is 4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. And 12 divided by 4 is 3. And I always check it and say, can I do anything else? No, so I'm done. Now, could you have divided 8 and 12 by anything else besides 4? You could divide them both by 2. Now this works. 2 is not the GCF, but 2 is a common factor. So if I would have divided by 2, and that's always a nice place to start if you're not very good at finding the GCF and you're not very good at your multiplication facts. If you see that they're both even, you know you're going to be able to divide by 2. So that's going to give me 4/6. And then I'm like, oh, they're both still even. So again, if they're both even numbers, I can divide by 2 again, and that would give me 2/3. So I end up with the same result. This one's a lot quicker, but this way works as well. Okay, so it's totally up to you what you prefer. Again, if you're really good with your multiplication facts, then this first way is probably going to be easier for you because it only takes 1 step. However, if you're not, then you might have to do multiple steps. So always be thinking, can I divide them by anything else? All right, but remember, it has to be a common factor. All right, so how about you do 14/16. Simplify 14/16 for me. What can I divide both 14 and 16 by? 2. So again, they're both even, so that's always a good place that you could start. So if I divide them both by 2, what's 14 divided by 2?
7.
And 16 divided by 2? 8. So I don't have both, they're not both even anymore. I have 1 odd and 1 even. 7 and 8, that's it. That's all I can do. So 7/8. All right, we feel okay with simplifying these? What's going to happen if I were to give you something that looks like this? Now this whole thing where you have a whole number and a fraction together is called a what?
Mixed number.
A mixed number. Okay? Now I want to simplify this mixed number. You may notice the fraction part of this can be simplified. The fraction part of this, they're both even. So Ari, you had your hand up. What do you think I should do here?
Multiply and add.
Alright, I could do that, but that's just gonna cause me a lot more work. What she's talking about is go ahead and changing this to an improper fraction, simplifying it, and then I'd have to turn it back into a mixed number. It would work, but that's a lot more effort. You don't have to do that. You can leave it as a mixed number. So if you just focus on your 6/8, you know that 3 is gonna stay a 3 regardless. What can I divide both 6 and 8 by? 2. Again, they're both even. So my 3 can stay a 3, okay, that's not gonna change. But my 6/8, 6 divided by 2 is, and 8 divided by 2. So 3 and 3/4. So again, if you have a mixed number, you can just simplify the fraction part of it without changing the whole number out in front, okay? Why don't you try one of those? Like, let's say you had 2 and 3/6. 2 and 3/6. What is an equal fraction, a simplified fraction for 2 and 3/6? Anyone want to tell me what their answer was?
2.5.
2 and 1/2, very good. So 3 and 6 can both be divided by 3. Remember we said our whole number is gonna stay a 2, and 3 divided by 3 is 1, 6 divided by 3 is 2. So 2 and 1/2 would be my simplified fraction. So again, if you have a mixed number, leave it as a mixed number, and you can just simplify the fraction part of it. All right, on this next part, let's review how to turn a mixed number. So we're gonna say whenever you turn something into something else in math, it's called convert. So let's convert a mixed number to an improper fraction. Convert a mixed number to an improper fraction. All right, so I'm gonna start off with the mixed number 2 and 1/3. And I'm gonna change this to an improper fraction. An improper fraction, the numerator is bigger than the denominator. Ari, you were gonna help me out with doing this on the last problem. Tell me how to do it now.
Multiply and add.
All right, go ahead.
Multiply 2 and 3 and add 2 and 1.
Good. So you first multiply and then you add. You work in a clockwise motion. So we're gonna do 3 times 2, which equals 6. 3 times 2 is 6. And then 6 plus 1 is 7, all right? So again, 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. So what is your improper fraction? 7 over 3. So your denominator stays the same. The denominator stays the same. The only thing that changes is going to be your numerator. 3 times 2 plus 1. That's how we got our 7. So how about you try one of these? Let's do 4 and 3/5. Go ahead and try that one.
This is ours.
Yeah.
It's time for us to go.
I know, we're gonna finish notes first. Thank you. All right, anyone want to share their answer? What'd you get, Ian?
23/5.
23 over 5. Who agrees with that? 23 over 5. Some agreement, there's some no hands. They may agree, may not agree. All right, so you should have first done 5 times 4 is 20. And then 20 plus 3 is 23. So I do agree with 23. And your bottom number, your denominator stays the same. So it was a 5. It needs to stay a 5. So there it is, 23 over 5. All right, feel okay with that? All right, let's move on to then to do the opposite, which would be to convert an improper fraction to a mixed number. Convert an improper fraction to a mixed number. So again, this is the opposite of what we just did. So again, an improper fraction is when you have a larger number in the numerator than you do in the denominator. Anyone want to walk me through? They feel pretty comfortable with what they would do to change this into a mixed number? You want to tell me how they would do it? Aiden?
I was taught to like see how many times 4 can go into 9,
Good.
and then that would be the mixed number, and then the leftovers would keep the denominator the same, and then the leftovers would be the numerator.
Very good. So, and do you usually just do it in your head?
Yeah.
Good. All right. So this is basically division. We kind of have talked about this before, that this is really meaning 9 divided by 4. So some people feel very comfortable doing it in their head, just like Aiden was describing. He was saying he thinks about how many times 4 will go into, 4 will go into 9, okay? And if you need help with that, 9 divided by 4 would look like this. 4 would go into 9 2 times, and then he said that would be the number out front, okay? Goes in there 2 times. And then whatever's left over, so another word for that would be the remainder. There'd be 1 left over. That's going to be your numerator. And then he said the denominator stays the same. So the denominator was a 4, it's going to stay a 4. So 2 and 1/4. So again, a lot of times people just do this in their head completely, which is fine. But if you aren't very comfortable with it, you can always write it out as a long division problem where you'd have 2 and 1/4. Okay, let's do another one where you try doing it. How about we do 8 over 3. 8 over 3. All right, anyone want to share their answer with me? 8 over 3, what'd you get? 2 and 2/3, anyone agree with that? 2 and 2/3? We have quite a few people that are agreeing with that. All right, 3 does go into 8 2 times, so that is going to be your whole number out front. 2 times 3 is 6, and when you subtract, you get with 2 left over. So the part that's left over, your remainder, is your numerator, and your denominator was a 3, and it stays a 3. So 2 and 2/3. Okay? Some people like seeing this visual of 2 and 2/3. Maybe that helps you. All right.
Can I add something just super quick, real quick? Can I see the pen real fast?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. If you get confused with your 8 over 3 and how to write that division-wise, just picture dumping it over, okay? So then your 3 would be here, your line would fall here, and then your 8, all right? And there's your division, okay? Sometimes we get confused on
Yeah. Which goes inside.
which goes inside,
Yeah,
so.
all right, now what are you gonna do if you have a mixed number that is improper? What I mean by that is, let's say you have 3 and 6 over 5. So 6 over 5 is improper. but we have a mixed number. We wanna write it as a mixed number. What do we get, any ideas on what you would do here? Aiden, what would you do?
You would do the same process, just like, so you do the same process as an improper fraction. And then you just add the other mixed number to the 3.
Okay, so he's saying you would just do exactly what you just did. Ignore this for a second, right? Ignore that 3 for a second and focus just on your 6/5. What would 6/5 be? 1 and 1/5, good. 5 goes into 6 one time with 1 left over. And then you would add on this 3 to it. 3 plus 1 and 1/5 would give you 4 and 1/5. Is there another way we could have done this problem besides how he did it? This is the easiest way. Takes less work. Any other ways that you could do it, you think?
To complete the problem should be a lot more.
Yes. So the other way that you could do it, which would take more time, you could change 3 6/5 into an improper fraction. So 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 6 is 21/5. Ooh, 21/5. 5 goes into 21 4 times. That's 20 with 1 left over. So that works also. So it's whichever method you prefer. You can leave it like this, which I think is the easiest, or you can change the whole thing into an improper fraction and then write it as a mixed number. So either way. All right, the last thing that I want to do today is talk about how you can tell if a fraction is less than a half, equals a half, or is more than a half. Okay, so comparing a fraction to 1/2. Compare a fraction to 1/2, or 0.5, if that makes you happier, okay, to a half. So let's say I have a fraction 3/8. And I wanted to know, does it equal 1/2? Is it less than a half? Is it more than a half? Any ideas on what you could do here? Aiden, you have lots of ideas today. Good, thank you.
Multiply the 3 by 2, which would be like 6. So it's not half. It's not more.
I don't know if that would help me. I want to know, like, comparing greater than, less than, equal to. Okay? Greater than, less than, equal to. What do you think?
If I wanted to know if the number was equal to a half, that would probably be the first thing I'd do, and make sure I'd see if I can get it to 1/2, and if it's 1 below the number or 1 higher, then I'll be able to tell.
So you're thinking, like, if you can simplify it.
To 1/2. then
Okay.
it's equal, and then it's more.
All right. So that's along the lines of what you could do here that would make this easy. What would the top number need to be in order for this to equal 1/2? 4, right? So if you look at the denominator, in order for this to equal 1/2, the numerator would have to be half of the denominator. So 4/8 would equal 1/2. So is 3/8 less than 4/8 or more than 4/8? Less than, okay? Another way you could do this, which is more time consuming, but let's say you drew a picture for both of these, okay? Circle and a circle, same size. This one would have 8 total parts. 3 of them shaded in. That one would have 2 total parts, 1 shaded in. That one's obviously more, okay? Now, I don't want you to have to draw pictures on all of these. That would take a long time. But that might help you kind of visualize it, okay? So again, the easiest thing to do is to think about what over 8 is going to be exactly 1/2. And again, 4/8 would be exactly 1/2. It's always half of the denominator. So this would be less than a half. All right, let's look at another one. Let's say we had 2/3 compared to 1/2. What is half of 3? I know it's an odd number, but you can still take half of it. What's half of 3? 1.5, 1.5, right? Is 2 more than 1.5 or less than 1.5? More, right? So this would be greater than a half. That's more than this. Again, you could draw your pictures. We need circles that are somewhat the same size, all right? 2/3. That's obviously more than a half. Okay, a half would just be this. So on your assignment, you're gonna say if something is more than a half, or less than a half, or equal to a half. Let's do one more of those, and then we will be finished. Let's say we have 7/20. What over 20 would be exactly 1/2? 10/20 would be exactly 1/2. So 7/20, is that less or more? Less. Does that help you out at all? Okay, all right. We will stop there, and I'll have you guys take a restroom break.